Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA draft and the Motor City crew.
Blake, I've had a fairly eventful week, so I thought we should just open up the show quickly by saying, how's your week gone? Has it been a little bit more relaxed than mine? We could get into that in a second, but I want to hear about your week first.
Man, yes and no. I was just telling you off air, but my day job, I'm taking some more paternity leave time starting next week. So my work life has been a little crazy, just trying to get ready for that. But after this week, I'll have some time off to be a full-time dad, which is fun. So we're busy for different reasons, and we're almost to the weekend.
Yeah, no, that's got to be kind of nice, but also a little stressful, I would think. Get to spend more time with the kids, so that's super exciting. But then also you got to wrap up all the work stuff. You got to set up so that you can take the time off. I can imagine that being a little stressful.
A little bit, and my wife went back to work today, so I'll be on my own. Anything that comes up, I'll have to work through it on my own, which I'm capable of, but it won't be easy.
All right, so if you guys listen to the Pistons Pulse, which if you're not, please do. Great podcast, not patting my own back there at all. At the very beginning, Bryce mentioned that my refrigerator died, and KCP for 3, and it's through, and the TV comments had the humor to ask me if my refrigerator is running. Assumedly, if not, if it is, I better go catch it. But at the time, on Monday, it was not running. At about 5:00, so an hour before we recorded for the Pistons Pulse, I called up Bryce. I was like, man, I can't record. I have to literally go buy a new refrigerator from Best Buy and hope that it could get delivered soon because all of our food is gone. So that's been my week. I've been making frequent stops over to a local speedway to get the ice bucket, the big old ice bags to fill up all the coolers, try to keep some frozen stuff alive. It's just been fun. Refrigerator troubles, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody.
The joys of owning a house. Yeah, KCP for 3. I laughed at your comment because I texted Wes the same exact joke. So that's a classic one that applies to this situation, and I love that someone else's head was in the same place where mine was.
Well, the best part about that was you were texting me that joke in an entirely different context because, Blake, we've got some exciting news to announce here, don't we?
Amazing transition. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm getting better at this whole podcasting host thing as the time goes on. But all right, guys, listen, we've actually started up a phone line. So there's a number you can call now if you want to ask us a question and hear your voice on the Pindown every week. We ask that you do keep it under 45 seconds if you want that question to be played out loud. We will filter through them. We'll download them. We'll get them pushed up on the podcast so you will hear your voice. Ask us any question you want. The number is 313-355-2717. Again, 313-355-2717. Keep under 45 seconds. We'll play your question on here, and then we'll answer it. So it'll be kind of like an old radio call-in show.
Yeah, I love it. Great idea. Shout out to you, Wes. You were the one that came up with that. All the on top of the podcasting transitions, being tech savvy with this one. So I love it. And anyone that's calling in, you can ask Wes if his refrigerator's running, but eventually, hopefully, we can limit the prank calls a bit.
Blake, I think I'm going to need you to put together some recording for the voicemail. I was going to do it. I was going to get the voicemail message, but I think we need your vocal cords, your tones to be greeting all of our listeners when they make a phone call to ask us a question. I think that's what we need.
Okay, I can do that. It's funny because my actual voicemail on my personal number is just like the standard like robot message. So I can come up with something good for this one.
Yes. All right. Everyone, please call that number if for no other reason than to hear whatever Blake comes up with for the introductory message. Again, the number 313-355-2717. Give us a call. We'll play your question on the podcast as long as it's under 45 seconds. So, Blake, getting on to our topics for today. Last week we went 1 through 5 on the big board, Piston specific. Why don't we do the same thing this week? Let's go 6 through 10 because there are so many guys that honestly have a pretty good argument all the way up to number 2 if the Pistons were to select there. So it's a pretty deep draft in terms of names that should be considered up near the top. And let's let you go first. Who do you have at number 6, and kind of give the pitch for him?
Yeah, I actually spoiled it a bit last week because my number 5 on my Pistons specific board was Dalton Connect from Tennessee. I really debated whether to put him or Modest Buzelis out of G League Ignite in that 5 spot. So I do have Buzelis at 6. Huge, long wing who has a bunch of upside. The thing is the shot. He shot extremely well in high school. The thought was that would carry over to the G League. It really didn't. He had a tough year from 3. I have his stats up right here. He shot somewhere around 25% from 3, 26.9% to be exact. I mean, if you want to give him a break, that G League Ignite program, it's not coming back for a reason. The roster construction with that was a mess, not always playing in the ideal scenario, much like the Pistons. But also, he did have a year playing against like next to NBA level guys, a lot of NBA level rookies. Like I know he played against Jarris Walker and some other rookies from last year's class. So great experience, shot from the NBA line, didn't shoot at the clip that we would like to see. I think if he did, he would be firmly in that like top 3 or somewhere in that range. But that's a question with him. I really think the shot with him is the big question for the Pistons. Like you want to bring in a prospect that can shoot ideally because the past couple drafts, no one's really a known shooter. Buzelis had that in his toolbox, but now there's more questions with it after his season with the Ignite. So if that comes along, if he shoots the heck out of the ball in his pre-draft process, then he could be a decent pick at number 5 or wherever the Pistons land.
So I actually have him at number 8. But what scares me probably the most about Buzelis is I really do look at him as kind of a 4-5. I don't think he's got much in terms of his ball handling that you'd really want to drop him down to the 3 spot, right? You wouldn't want him purely on the wing. So I do kind of look at him as a big. You said it. The shot really did not translate. And I question his strength quite a bit, his functional strength. There were plenty of times you'd see him. It's in the G League, so it is against older competition, but he'd try to post up, right? And he wouldn't get much ground. He'd get bumped off his line. Sometimes he'd get an isolation. He'd drive to the rim. If you hit him, if you just checked him a little bit, he'd get bumped off his line. Defensively, it pops up all the time, too. Guys were able to bury him into the hoop. Smaller guards were able to move him on the perimeter and drive by him. Just like the physicality does concern me a little bit. And I did want to ask you if you were able to find, or if you happen to know what he shot from the mid-range this past season with the Ignite. Because just from watching the tape, right, I didn't think it was that bad. And I only bring that up because I wonder if his high school shooting translated, just not to the 3-point line with added distance. I wonder if he just shot well from, high school 3-point range, right, which is just at the top of the key. Does that bode well for him becoming a better shooter in the future? I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But those are my concerns. I mean, obviously he does have quite a bit of ceiling, right? I have him at 8. That's still a guy you're considering there at 4 and 5. And with certain teams, even, it makes a lot more sense. Like, I think he just screams Toronto Raptor to me. Anywhere the Raptors are picking, I think they're a threat to take Matas Buzelis just because of the types of players they tend to target. So, I like him. I'm not sure I see all the upside. I think the upside is really someone that looks a lot like Lauri Markkanen, but Markkanen had so much more shooting history than Buzelis does, and that really concerns me.
Yeah, I don't have his like mid-range numbers in front of me. Honestly, I don't know if G League stats have that whole synergy connection like NBA.com does. So I'm sure someone out there that has a synergy login has it. So we should definitely find those numbers. But what you bring up with the strength, like that's definitely another thing to call out with him. I know it was a focus for him in the G League Ignite program. I mean, we didn't really see it translate on the court, but that like ideally he should add to his frame, get a bit stronger. And really the reason why I had him on the 6 slot over maybe someone that you had is I just think that the shot is somewhere there. And I think for the Pistons, like you have to prioritize someone that can or at least has real upside to shoot, as opposed to some of the other wing prospects that are out there. Like in my top 5 big board, I had Reed Shepard, Risa Shea, Connect. Those are all prospects that their shot ideally, like that's one of the main tools in their bag, or they're like calling cards as a prospect. Buzelis is just after that for me because we saw him struggle, but the shot should hopefully come along. Like that's really going to decide how he ends up as a player.
And to your point, right? If the shot does come along, he is a guy that you could. He is one of those unicorns because he does block shots very well, fairly well as a weak side rim protector. I was pretty impressed with his rotation, his ability, and his timing in that area. So if he is a guy that you do really buy the jump shot on, then yeah, he's a solid prospect. Problem is, he was what 27%. I'm looking at the website, the G League
Yeah.
website, and it says it's over 26 games. So that has to be correct because I believe that was the total. So yeah, 27% from 3. Not not great. And really quickly, I want to look at his free throw percentage,
It
68.
is. Yeah.
So not great as well. Like those are two big indicators. He was shooting at the NBA line, didn't do it well. Shooting free throws, not all that good. Now the G League did have some weird 1 for 2 free throws. It's a little bit different, but still the number wasn't great. So I think there's a lot of reason to be concerned there. And the Franz comp that YouTube user brings up here, I've seen this a lot. Is that something that you see with him? Because Franz, to me, he he very much was a wing coming out of Michigan, and Buzelis just doesn't play like that. Am I wrong? Is that a comp that you would make there?
I I get the Franz comp, but I'm a little more with you. I think his ideal archetype is more or player that he could hopefully turn into is more in that Lauri Markkanen realm. Like the issue is if you're gonna play him as, I don't even know if you can call him like a small ball 5 because he's 6'10", 6'11". But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a traditional 5 next to him, like that is a question too. Because I mean, Franz is playing next to like Wendell Carter most of the time, who's a
Yep.
floor spacing 5.
And
I
Paulo.
Yeah, and Paolo. So I mean, the Pistons don't have that player to play next to him in the front court, which is another issue. But wings that are in the have like the size, frame, skill set that Buzelis does are the guys that are prioritized, the guys that get paid, the guys that the Pistons need to seriously consider and bring in. It's just still, I just keep going back to the shot. That's like the huge swing with him.
And YouTube user, to be fair, I wouldn't compare Risa Shea to Franz either, which is another name you brought up there. So, maybe Matas is a better Franz comp than Risa Shea is a Franz comp. That might be true. I don't think either of them are very good comps to Franz Wagner, though. The guy I had number 6 for the Pistons specific big board, so this should tell you guys how conflicted I am with him, is Nikola Topic. He's a point guard playing in Serbia, probably the best passer playmaker in the draft, probably better than Reed, although I do love Reed. The thing is, he's 6'6" and he's very much a point guard. So let me just ask you this, Blake. Is it a bad thing to have 2 Cade Cunninghams? Like, legitimately, is that a bad thing? Because I don't know. It might be.
Well, yeah, the issue with Topic, like I think he's clearly one of the best prospects in this draft. Like probably top three, maybe even firmly number two, right after Alex Sarr for
I
me.
could make an argument for putting him one just in
Yeah,
general. He's
yeah,
so good.
yeah. That is fair. I mean, he is a big guard who is a crazy playmaker. It's right. Like if you don't have Cade Cunningham, like Topic is probably firmly one or two for the Pistons, but I just don't know if he's the best player to put next to Cade. I think what's really interesting is say the Pistons are at fall to number 5 or number 4, wherever they end up, if Topic is clearly the best prospect still available, and depending on what they do with the moves, like if Jaden Ivey gets traded or doesn't get traded, and there is some room in the backcourt, like do you take Topic because he's the clear best player available and make it work with Cade? I don't know if that's what I would do based on where they stand, but I mean, I love the player, and maybe the Pistons will too.
YouTube user again brings up this question: what team is successful in the playoffs currently that has their two best players as guards? I think it's a difficult question to ask, so I'm going to, because I was thinking about this the other night. I'm gonna highlight three teams that have very prominent guards. Two of them that are one of the two or three best players on their team. Right. The obvious one is the Mavericks with Luka and Kyrie. The next one's the Cavs with Garland and Mitchell. I think you can make an argument for Allen or Mobley getting put over Garland, but you also could put Garland there at number two. So, splitting hairs there. And then as well, the Thunder. And I think the Thunder is probably the more interesting comparison with this one because I'm not sure Giddy's really a scorer, and neither is Topic, at least not at this point in his career. I think Topic is a guy like his footwork and his ball handling are so impressive. Where maybe given enough time, he figures out NBA length and athleticism, and now he's just a master in isolation. Right? That's possible. That's there. I wouldn't bet on it. It's tough to bet on that for anybody. So like Topic playing kind of the Giddy role, being a do it all kind of guy, guard for the Pistons next to Cade Cunningham playing more like Shea. Like maybe is that interesting? I don't know. Maybe.
The only like I guess pushback is
Giddy's
I
like
think
6'9".
and I think like Chet makes the whole thing work in OKC, and I would even say Jalen Williams is probably if you're saying like the two best players, I would put both of them before Giddy. It's an interesting comp, but I don't think that thing works if you don't have a player like Chet, because the question with Topic as well is like, is he ever going to develop that outside shot? Like, if he's used in a Giddy role, like sure, but you need a guy who can space the floor like Chet, and dudes like that don't come along. Like if that dude was available, he would far and away be number one on probably any team's big board this year.
Yeah, and the really tough thing too is I would say that drafting Topic means Ivy is gone, Asar can't start, Duren probably gone. Like you'd need Cade Topic and then three and D play finishers at the next 3, 4, 5. And ideally, then you'd also not really invest hardly anything in your backup point guard spot. And depending on how you view Marcus Sasser, that could be a problem as well. So it would really, really unseat a lot. But he is so talented. And
Yeah.
that's why I've got him at 6. I'm curious where you have him on a Pistons big board.
Yeah, I actually have him. I have him at number 9 on mine, and it
There you
was
go.
kind of because I just got to a point where I was like, I am putting too many guys for that would fit the Pistons better, and this guy is too good of a prospect to have him slip any further. I mean, 9 is sounds even low to me right now. It's just like you said, there would have to be changes on how the team works. I hope for the sake of things being clean. He just it finds a way to end up on the Spurs because that's like the fit everyone talks about and makes the most sense. I mean, it would make the Spurs a lot better. So there's another young team that would maybe pass the Pistons. But yeah, with Topic, depending on where it shakes out, I would love to know what the discussions are like for or against him because I think he's maybe one of the most polarizing top prospects on whether you take him and try to make it work or pass on him and go for someone like Connect isn't as good of a prospect, but he's a clear better fit. Like go for someone like that.
All right, let's just read off 6 through 10, both of us. I'll go first since we're running low on time. So number 6, I got Topic. Number 7, I got Klingon, who we talked about last week. You had him at number 5. Number 8, I've got Buzelis. 9, Stefan Castle. And 10, Kyle Filipowski. What do you got 6 through 10?
All right, so 6, I have Buzelis. 7, I have Ron Holland. 8, I have Cody Williams. 9, I have Topic. And 10, I got a little spicy with this one. And there's a couple guys I hate that I left out of my Pistons top 10, but I put Jared McCain at number 10.
I like McCain. I do. He's a great shooter. He's a very, very good shooter. I don't think you're going to get much more out of him, and he's pretty small. But in terms of a bench gunner, I like that. I like him there.
Yeah, I just think he's a good fit. I mean, he had a great year shooting, had a great tournament run, which is like, how much do you want to put that into his stock? But it wasn't just that. It was really the full season. I think he would be a great ad, can play off ball just as that floor spacing shooter. I really hate that I didn't have Steph Castle in there, but McCain is a guy like earlier in the college season, like a lot of people tabbed Jacoby Walter as the perfect fit for the
Yep.
Pistons because he was that off ball guard and then he kind of fell off a bit. So McCain is kind of that for me. I don't think there's really a world where he ends up on the Pistons unless they trade back, but nevertheless, I think he's a good fit.
All right, and just for all the listeners, be the voice of the people and sell me on Ron Holland and Cody Williams because neither of them made my top 10. And full disclosure, I do have Ron Holland and Cody Williams 11 and 12, respectively. So they were right there. I do have a tier break, though, after Castle. So Filipowski, Holland, Williams, and a couple others, I all could like see at maybe 10. But I don't have them high enough where I'd be considering them for Detroit. So give me the sell.
Yeah, so Holland is a upside swing. The reason I didn't have him in front of Buzelis is just because the shot again, like that's not really something he's known for, but super athletic, good defender, good off-ball mover, can make things happen. So I I like the swing there, especially for a team like the Pistons, where you're trying to find a second and or third star. He could definitely develop into that one of these days. His season with the Ignite ended a bit shorter due to injury, so another guy I'll be interested to see how they perform and what we hear through the workouts, the combine, everything like that. And then Cody Williams, just another wing that would fit, but again, like the question is the shot. There were some times, like Wes, you and I talked about this, like for Colorado, where you couldn't really see. He looked kind of invisible on the floor. I think that was a little bit of a product of playing on a good team next to good college players like KJ Simpson, who is their guard, and Tristan Da Silva, who's a great wing, going to be a first round pick. So I I don't know. I think like my question for Cody is the size. He needs to add strength. I'm sure he will. How long is that going to take? Are the Pistons willing to go through whatever that process is, and will his shot, like, will he develop into a average, above average 3-point shooter? I think he could. We didn't really see it a ton or at volume this year. He's
I think
another
he took
guy that,
what 40 total 3-point attempts on the season, right?
right. And he fought through injuries at points too. So he missed some time and then took some time to ramp up when he came back. So another guy. Like the pre-draft process is going to be super important for him, especially after falling falling a lot. And yeah, YouTube user, the it is interesting how Colorado has a few prospects this year. I think Tristan Da Silva is honestly the most pro ready. He's a guy that hopefully we'll talk more about one day, but he would help the Pistons immediately. It's just like not in their draft range.
All right, let's get to some questions. Really quick before we do, I want to give a shout out to at Chuck Healy 180 on Twitter because he asked me directly. He asked about a rare coaches trade. He was wondering if the Pistons could basically trade Monty Williams somewhere else. And the answer is probably not. I can't think of the last time that happened outside of like Doc Rivers to the Clippers. Like those are rare. Usually doesn't happen. Plus, Monty's got a massive contract that another owner would have to want to take. So, I mean, not too much there to really discuss, but I wanted to give him a shout out because it was kind of a fun idea, fun question. So just wanted to shout him out for that. Let's get to this one. This is a draft question. I thought it was pretty fun. This is from No Frown Motown in the DBB comments. He says, where would Asar Thompson rank in this year's draft class? And since we're talking about big boards, where would you slot him in?
Yeah, this is a good one. Like it's interesting because I'm kind of thinking about Ron Holland as like a little bit of a similar, not exactly the same, but similar like prospect profile. But I think Asar, like what he showed defensively, the athleticism, the secondary playmaking, like honestly, I think he could be as high as number two in this year's class, like behind Alex Sarr. The thing is, we know as we saw all year, Asar isn't a 3-point shooter. So who's at that number two? Like I think he would definitely be picked somewhere in the 2 to 5 range. Um, but yeah, like I kind of like Asar other over some of the other like wing prospects. He does different stuff, but I think what he does defensively and the athlete he is uh, can make you like feel good about taking him over some of these newer prospects.
Blake, I'm about to make no friends. I
Oh
really am. I
gosh.
apologize to everybody in advance for this one. Look, okay, if you look back at Asar Thompson, his pre-draft profile, right? When we were all looking at the same stuff, a lot of the concerns translated. You looked at his OTE tape, you thought, man, that guy's a terrible shooter. Well, he shot under 20%. You looked at the OTE tape and you said, I'm not sure if he can really create in the half court. I'm not sure if he can get shots at the rim on his own. Translated, didn't happen. You worried about the tightness of the handle and the ability to actually make plays for others in the half court. Translated, it didn't really happen. And on top of that, all of that, you just worried about the full package offensive ceiling. It's pretty rare for a guy with that profile to come in and really be impactful without a jump shot. Just about the only example of it was Andre Iguodala, and for every Andre Iguodala, there are what, like 20 Evan Turners. So Arsar Thompson was a rough draft pick for me in my own personal evaluation. I know you were a lot higher on him. This season, I'd slide him in. Like I'm looking at the big board now. I'd probably slot him in at number 7. So right after Topic, but before Donovan Clingan. I think the athletic upside, the defensive upside, that's all there. That all would have been there. I would have really favored that. And to full disclosure, I think I had Asar at like 11 last year when before the draft happened. So he did move up 4 spots in this year's class. And I would have men a little bit higher. Men would probably be 2 or 3 for me this year. But yeah, I'm sorry to be the Asar Thompson downer. Even now after the season, right? Like I buy the defense, I buy the athletic ability, but in order for him to really be an impactful offensive player one day, which he's going to have to be if he's going to be a star, quote unquote, right? You're gambling on him becoming a league average 3-point shooter, and there's no reason to believe that he will. It's almost unfair to expect it. Or you're betting on him tightening up the handle and becoming a pretty good offensive, like isolation player, pick and roll ball handler, and playmaker. And I mean, there's a little bit of reason to expect that could happen, but it's not solid. So, yeah, like I would not have him top 5. I wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the especially like going through this year's prospects as I pretty much was harping on going through our big board. The thing that I'm debating, and it might be that I'm thinking of it too much in a Pistons lens, but the shooting upside, like showing that upside is there as a shooter is huge. And a lot of these guys have questions like Cody Williams, Ron Holland, Nikola Topic, like that same question is there with Asar as well. So it's how much does a team need an additional floor spacer out there? Like, I mean, all teams need that. So it's an
Blake,
interesting debate.
let me ask you this, and then we'll move on because I don't want to start an argument. I know you're a big Asar Thompson fan, and you were pre-draft, and you're right too as well. It's fine. Topic, Williams, Filipowski, Castle. Would you really say that they are currently worse shooting prospects than Asar Thompson was coming out of OTE?
No, but that's
I
not
wouldn't
fair.
either.
Come
That's the thing. I wouldn't
on.
either. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point, but we need to focus on what Asar does that is good. He does a lot of things better than those guys, and he can be a good NBA player. And the last thing I'll say on Asar is I've seen some people on Twitter throw out like, hopefully he turns into like a Josh Hart type player one day. Like, yeah, Josh Hart like shied away from a lot of threes in the regular season, but he's made some pretty big shots in the playoffs so far. And like we saw a stretch where Asar strung together, made a few threes, but like I don't think we're confident that he could do that, especially in a pressure scenario like what the Knicks are going through right now.
Yeah, and to be clear, like Arsar Thompson's going to be an NBA player for a long time. His defense is legit already in year one. That's rare. You don't see that a lot. That translated immediately, and that's really difficult to do. So, like I completely buy him as a rotation player, maybe a fringe starter, but he needs those other things to be a legit starter or a star. And that's where I question it. So I really wouldn't have him top five. But let's get on to this next one as well. This was also draft related, and we have talked about this guy a little bit, but Chone81 in the DBB comments wants to know about Dalton Connect. Says that the Pistons end up drafting 4 or 5 and there's no trade available. Why wouldn't you just select Dalton Connect? He's a proven shooter and a decent athlete, which I agree with both of those. Connect kind of gets slighted as an athlete, and I don't think he should.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, and there might not be trades available on top of just like it being people being lower on this class. Like, who knows if someone's gonna want to trade up for the money that you have to pay a player that's drafted in the top five based on whatever their situation is. But yeah, like I wouldn't be mad if that's how it turned out. I think that would tell me that the Pistons are prioritizing someone that can fit in, complements the team on day one over some of these other guys that are out there that you have questions about and are more projects. And a lot of people have been talking about how we don't know, or we probably don't think that where this team is, they can afford to bring in another guy who's just a project and keep all your young, quote unquote, young core that you have and develop all these guys in house. Like Dalton Connect's one of the older players. Yes, I still think he can improve, but he's probably more finished on day one. Like definitely than a Cody Williams, for example. So I wouldn't hate it at all.
I think the intriguing thing with Dalton Connect is that you're getting a surefire double with the potential that it becomes even more than that. Like, what you're getting with Dalton Connect. He can score at all 3 levels, and he is an incredible shooter. Not an amazing defender, but you could plug him into a decent system and he'll be okay. Like, he'll float. He won't sink. That's good enough, right, for that type of player. So minimum, you're getting a really good bench guy who could probably start on a lot of teams if there's enough structure around him. But like you mentioned, he's older, but he's a late bloomer. He's done a lot of late growth here to get him where he is. There's no reason that can't continue. He could still be a lot more than that. Dalton Connect and Reed Shepard's another one of these guys to me. But those are the two guys that I think you could look back on in 4 or 5 seasons and go, man, why did we not take them higher? Like they became everything they were in college in the NBA, and then a little bit more, just because of the extra space on offense that you get. They're solid, and the Pistons could use solid. They really could use solid right now.
Yeah, 100%. And like YouTube user brings up in the chat that he's a bad defender. Like that's totally correct. Like I don't think that any team is really going to draft Connect for his defense. The hope is that
Agreed.
he could eventually just stay afloat, but it's very real that he might be the worst defender on the floor. And like if he's playing that other like guard spot next to Cade, like maybe it is that you have Asar Thompson taking the top assignment on the other end, but ideally you'd want an off guard who could take like primary scorers on the other end. And I don't think that it's feasible to put Connect in that right now. But everything he brings on offense, like Memphis is sitting there with a top 10 pick. Like if he ends up on Memphis, he helps them on day one and they're going to get better with Ja back. Like he could immediately come in and make an impact and everyone else can be like, oh, why wasn't he selected at number 4 or number 5?
There are two guys in this draft class. Well, three guys that I think if you take them, I can guarantee you they're starting day one in Detroit. That would be Alex Sarr, Dalton Connect, and Nikola Topic. And that is it. Even Reese Sachet, I think if you could set it up so he's off the bench, he might be better for it. So yeah, I'll just leave that there. YouTube user brought up a good question. I'll answer this one first because I feel it was more directed at me because it's about the Asar Thompson draft last year. But says, who would you take over Asar Thompson in retrospect? So I went and looked. I went and found my board from last season. I would still take Cam Whitmore, Jarace Walker, Taylor Hendricks, and Anthony Black over Asar Thompson, even right now in hindsight. Do you disagree with any of those, or are you kind of on the same page?
I'm questioning. I need to chew on Anthony Black a little more. The name that stuck out to me, which is actually the same one that YouTube user brought up, was Taylor Hendricks. Like he's taking over
Oh
that.
yeah, I just forgot to mention him. Yep,
No,
Taylor
you
Hendricks.
you
Yep.
brought him up, but he's the one for me that really sticks out. Like he's taking over a starting front court spot from Walker Kessler. And he helps like with a lot of the things that we've harped on with Jalen Duren. I think a big man that can space the floor a little bit would do wonders for this team. So it would be great. I mean, he's not a traditional center by any means, but he's the name that sticks out to me that I think would have been intriguing to have potentially over Asar.
YouTube user says no way to Jarace Walker. So I'm going to say a little bit in defense of Jarace Walker and just remember the context that he's in. That Pacers team was good from day one, and he did play very well in the G League and then in limited
He
stretches here
dominated
in
the
the
G
second
League.
half. Yeah, completely dominated the G League. And then in limited stretches there in the second half of the season, even after the Pascal Siakam trade, looked really good, flashed a lot of interesting stuff, even as a shooter, definitely as a defender, a little bit as a playmaker. Like, I think he's still a fantastic prospect, and I would not be surprised at all if next season he looks very, very good in the Pacers pinstripes. All right, let's see. Coffee in the DBB comments. He wants to know if there are too many cooks in the kitchen. So now we're on our hobo search. We're just bouncing around the topics. What do you think? Too many cooks, just right? What's been going on? What are they cooking there in the Detroit front office?
Man, if only I knew. I mean, I think so. Like this has to be what we assume is going on. I know there's all the discussion on Arn Tellem and how much he's influencing and what's going on. I mean, neither of us know what's going on behind the scenes, but yeah, there's like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Like coffee brings up what I mean with this new I just struggle so much saying hobo with this new basketball executive search. I I mean, I'm assuming like ideally what I want is for that person to be the lead decision maker in it. From what we've been told, that's what it seems like the plan is. As long as Arn is still around and I mean, I'm assuming he's not going to be around, but if he is, and then Dwayne Casey, I'm sure they'll have influence and their voices will be heard. But this new person should be the final decision maker. And hopefully that helps clear things up because although we don't know behind the scenes, like what's truly happening, who is that, like who is the final person, if there is a final person that's like slamming their fist down on the table making decisions, like maybe that's the case, but all we can assume right now is like, yeah, there are probably too many cooks in the kitchen here.
I lean to what Omari has been talking about a little bit every now and then on the Pistons Pulse and in his writing for the Free Press because look, almost every single front office across the league has many cooks. There are always tons of voices. All of them carry various level of influence. In places like Phoenix, for example, you've got ownership that's super involved in player personnel. Like this kind of thing happens a lot and to various levels of success. And the one liner that Omari keeps using is, the problem isn't that there are too many cooks; it's that they have a bad recipe. They're putting out terrible food. There's a lot of cooks and they're just putting out bad food right now. So if you give them a better recipe, maybe they're going to make better food. Right? I think that's more of my issue. I don't think there are too many cooks. I don't even think there's an abnormal amount of cooks right now in the kitchen. The problem is just that it's been bad. So whoever's been making the final decision has not been doing a good job and they need a different plan, which it sounds like they've recognized because, again, by all accounts, whoever gets hired next is not only the final decision maker, but is also setting the vision for what Pistons basketball is going to be, which that phrasing also makes me pretty confident Troy Weaver's gone for what it's worth. So, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that there have just been too many voices. It's just that the voices are saying things they shouldn't be saying. So I don't know. Maybe that still makes you want to fire everybody. That's fine. That's fair. I'm not saying don't do that, but I don't think the problem is just the quantity. It's the quality.
Right. Yeah, it leads me what I've been thinking about a lot lately is, and it's no secret, is what, like looking at the past few drafts, you come away with Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson as like your main takeaways, picks, and like all of those guys are good individually, but it clearly has not been working together. It seems like there's not, like you mentioned, that vision on what this team is going to be. We haven't. I mean, you can make the argument that based on where the team is, you're drafting the best player on your board and trying to make it work out. But it's clear that the guys that have been brought in aren't fully complementing and like maximizing Cade Cunningham, who's the guy that you're building around. So hopefully this new person, whenever they're hired, their goal number one is to define that vision, like you said, and get the best out of Cade Cunningham.
All right, this next one is from at Richard Brooks. One on Twitter says, which of these guys would you go after in free agency? Rank them for Detroit. The guys being Kelly Oubre, Najee Marshall, Derek Jones Jr., and Taurean Prince.
Oof. So I pulled some stats for these guys just for the sake of context, so everyone knows. Kelly Oubre, 15.4 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.8 stocks, and 31% from 3 this year. Najee Marshall, 7.1 points, 3.6 boards, 1.9 assists, 0.9 stocks, 38.7% from 3 on 2.3 attempts per game. Derek Jones Jr., 8.6 points, 3.3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1.4 stocks, 34.3% from 3 on 3.1 attempts. And then Taurean Prince, 8.9 points, 2.9 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.1 stocks, and 39.6 from 3 on over 4.5 attempts. So I The name that sticks out to me here is Najee Marshall, just because I think he has the most upside and he played great for New Orleans in the playoffs. Like, really stepped up when Brandon Ingram was getting blitzed. I don't know how easy it would be to sign him away. Like, I feel like he's going to get paid no matter where he goes. So I think that would be a good one. And then the next one for me is Torian Prince, just because he's the better, at least this year, 3-point shooter of the bunch. And he's also a good defender and has rebounded well for the minutes that he's been on. Third, I'd have Kelly Oubre, just because we've seen, like, he's been a Pistons killer his whole career. I think he would be a good player to add just for floor spacing and hopefully do some other stuff. And rounding it out with Derek Jones Jr., I mean, I think he would be a good add too. I mean, he's clearly an NBA level rotation player. Like, he's starting on a playoff team and has carved out a role. And it's probably him being hidden from like Luca and Kyrie and everything else they have going on in Dallas. But sometimes I'm just like, what is he exactly doing out there? But at the same time, like, he's their fifth option in that starting group, and he's done some good things in those minutes. And I think he'd be a good signing for the Pistons.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would switch would be I would probably put Oubre over Torian Prince in that number 2 spot. Just Oubre's a career scorer. He's always been a scorer. The Pistons need some scorers, especially on the wing. This team really lacks talent on the wing, at the wing forward position. They really lack in that spot. So any way they can add legitimate offensive threats from there who aren't awful on defense, I think that's a plus. But agreed on Najee Marshall. He'd be a great fit. Good gamble on upside there too. There's definitely a little bit more room for him to expand if you give him a little bit more of a role. So yeah, I like that one quite a bit. I wouldn't change too much from what you had. So let's do this one here. This one is from Rames in the DBB comments. It says, how many new players do you think will be playing in next year's 10-man rotation?
Man, this is a tough one. So, I mean, just putting like Cade, Duren, Ivy, Asar, Fontecchio, Quentin Grimes, and Stu out there. I mean, like, Fontecchio needs to be signed. What are you going to do with Quentin Grimes? So I think one of those players will probably not be playing next year, and I think it's more likely it's one of Ivy or Duren, if you want to loop Asar in there too, like whoever you're going to use as a trade piece. So, and I probably should have added Marcus Sasser into the 10-man. Like, he probably is. I don't know if he's going to have a role next year, but he could. So I'm somewhere in the 3 to 4 range, but probably most likely 4 new players in the 10-man next year.
I feel like I can guarantee 3. I think no matter what, Cade, obviously, but Fontecchio and Isaiah Stewart are probably all back. Should we include Quentin Grimes in this? I guess we should if we're including Fontecchio, but he was hurt so much that
right.
All right, let's call it 4 because Quentin Grimes is going to stick around as well, and he's going to play. He's the exact archetype they need at that 2 guard spot. So 4. So that's your 4. The rest of it, I don't know. I don't think so. I would bet against it. Even Sasser, who I wouldn't really expect Marcus Sasser to get traded. Like, is he really going to crack the rotation as a backup 1 or 2? Really, just as a 1 because you got Quentin Grimes in his way.
Right.
It just gets tough.
Wondering.
And then it's not like Ivy, Asar, and Duren are these otherworldly prospects where just one of them on their own is going to net a huge return. You'd need to package at least 2 of them, and then maybe a third if you want to keep a future pick. Otherwise, you're sending out a future pick. Like, if you want to get a legit impact guy, it's going to whittle down pretty fast. If I had to add a 5th, it would be Asar Thompson at this point. But I don't even think the jury's still out. I don't think he's absolutely locked to be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on who you include in trades. Like of the list we mentioned, like I think Fontecchio, Stewart, and I mean Grimes is a tough one, but like that group of players is more likely to be back in the rotation compared to like Ivy and Duren. And like we are talking about, if you want to loop in a SAR there too, I completely understand that because you need to put up trade chips if you're trying to really go in the market and hunt for a player or players that are going to make this team better.
YouTube user brings up this, and that being that he would like to see Cade, Ivy, Grimes, Tech, Duran, Stu, and Asar all back. So I want to bring this up for just specifically the young guys. And here's the question I want to ask you, because YouTube user is not the only one that thinks this. There are a lot of people that would like to see all of these young guys back. My question is, I'm trying to find a nicer way to phrase it, but I'm just going to go for it. This team just won 14 games. This team saw most of the four of those young guys, plus Isaiah Stewart, played most of the season, mostly healthy. They missed games here and there. Obviously, no one played the full 82, so mostly healthy. Yes, you had Monty Williams, who by all accounts did not help out Jaden Ivey. So maybe Monty Williams accounts for, 6 wins. 6 wins. So now you're at 20 wins. Okay. This group of four guys maybe would have won you 20 games. Why on earth do so many people want to keep all four of them?
Well, I think the thing is like it depends how you use the cap space. Like I think we have
Agreed there.
a question about this later. Like if you go and sign Isaiah Hartenstein outright with your cap space, like are you keeping Jalen Duren or are you trading him to bring in like someone else? And then can you also go out and sign a Malik Monk or someone like that? Like I guess the question for me with keeping them all back and like what YouTube user is saying is that he doesn't think that or he does think that those people are going to be back. Like it's not necessarily concluded that any of them are going to be moved, which is correct. So are you able to bring players in that push those guys to the bench or towards like the back end of the rotation? That's the huge question for me. And I mean, you also have if you do nothing and just sign guys with your cap space, you also have a draft pick. So how does that pick fit in the equation too?
All right, let me just ask you this philosophically then, okay? Because Cade just finished up his really second year, but it was year 3. Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, year 2. Asar Thompson, year 1. Asar Thompson, it's way too early to say anything about his career. Ivy Duren, it's a little more safe because they're in year 2. Cade, you can project a little bit further out. You got more data. But that group of guys, we've seen younger groups of guys have much more success. And I'm not even talking like playoffs with the Thunder. I'm talking even just much more success being 25 wins, which would have been 11 more than what this team won this past season. 5 more than what maybe you'd think would be best case scenario if someone other than Monty Williams is coaching the team. Like, why would you want to continue building around those 4 guys if what we've seen to date is so not been good, to put lightly, as a unit?
Right. I mean, I think
And throw
that's
Stu in there too, even though I'm a big fan of Isaiah Stewart. Like, I have to throw him in there. He's year 4, just got a big money extension. They started him most of the year. He deserves as much blame as well.
yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, and I also like I'm thinking to our guy and fearless leader Sean Corp wrote a piece on Detroit Bad Boys on whether we're like collectively willing to give up one of Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren specifically, or even Asar Thompson too soon. I yeah, I think it's totally fair, but if you can bring guys in cap space, like, do you just keep Ivy, Duren, Asar around, even if they're not part of your long-term plans to get them developing in your system and see what happens? Hopefully, one, two, all of them take a leap that you're expecting and can grow into a player. We don't know if that's going to happen. I just think uh, like what I mentioned when we were talking about draft picks, these picks were made because of the player and the prospects that they were, not necessarily because they fit the team. I think that needs to be addressed. So if you can bring in free agents, a draft pick that fits the team, keep your guys around. I can see it. Like I don't necessarily like it to YouTube users' point, it is possibly likely that all of them are still around next season because we're not ready to trade, like give up on one of them, quote unquote. But I also don't know if it's likely either because if you have to go and bring someone in a trade, like those are the pieces you have other than your picks. And do you want to give your pick up?
And to be clear, I'm not saying like give up and boot all these guys right now. I'm saying the philosophical idea of building around them as a core unit, right? The odds that you won 14 games and you've got four young players and two of them, so half of the guys that won you 14 games, two of them were diamonds in the rough and really we're just in a bad situation and they're way better than what they've shown to date. Like that alone is pretty low with a team this bad. And I think Cade is for sure like a guaranteed diamond in the rough here because of what he's already shown. He clearly played above and beyond his context. He was set up for failure and still had a great season. So what are the chances there's another one that's legitimately worth building your future around next to Cade? I think that's just a really hard question and not really a fun one to deal with coming from a big time Jaden Ivey fan over here. Like it doesn't look good for these guys being foundational, which probably speaks a little bit to the draft history as well with the current GM for now, Troy Weaver, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like these these guys, it's likely that this quote unquote core four, the term that we've heard pounded to death, isn't your true core. You need to do something else to add someone, and that like Asar is probably a rotational player, your fifth starter, your sixth man, whatever it is. Like they're not your true core. They're still looking for that. I mean, you have the guy in Cade Cunningham, which is probably the hardest part, but what's next to him is up in the air, and whether you have to give up some of your young pieces to go get that other core member or members, like that might be what you have to do.
A YouTube user brings up a good question. Makes me smile a little bit. He says, if you don't think they're good enough to build around, do you think other GMs do? And my answer is no. No, I don't. I think that's why you got to package so many of them together to get any kind of legitimate upgrade. The only real one I could see that has legit value right now could be Jaden Ivey. And that's just because I think you could, one, I obviously like him the most. He personally, I would have him highest on that group of three as prospects. But beyond that, his situation this past season was so weird that I could very easily see other GMs kind of looking at that context and going, I could fix him and, wanting to bring him in, give up some value for that. But, even in that, are you giving up a bunch of future firsts to get that? No, like now it's a second draft candidate. So you're not buying super high. On Jaden Ivey, even though I think he'd probably have the most value. But regardless, that's enough downer talk. I'm sorry that's what that turned into. Erwin, we see you. We see you in the chat here. Thanks for tuning in live. You sent in a very good question. I'm looking for it now about the pace of the team and noted that the Pistons played a noticeably slower pace in the second half of the season after the deadline. They also had a little bit more focus on defense and spacing combined instead of just one or the other, which was partially due to the trades that were made, Fontecchio playing a big role there. And as well, they definitely use Cade Cunningham as a legit number one option. And I don't think there's a real way to argue that at all with the absence of Bojan and Burks there for the final half of the season. So he wants to know, how do you think that should impact the restoration or rebuild here moving into the future?
I mean, I think it should be a bit of a proof of concept almost, because you made these moves at the deadline that are more catered toward how this team can succeed. I saw, yeah, Coffee brings up in the chat Mike Muscala. He was only around for a cup of coffee, no pun intended. But even though he's not a player that you have for the long term, because of where he is in his career, like a player like that would really unlock what this team can do. So I think it's a learning that you can apply to some of these moves that you're going to make. And you saw them get rid of some guys, dump salary, with the goal of bringing in one real NBA players, which you didn't have like a full rotation of NBA guys to start the team. That's not to start the season, excuse me. That's not the roster that you can come in with. You bring in some decent players, as well as some guys that can play next to Cade Cunningham, can help develop, or I guess just maximize his potential. And now you just have to go and get better players or more pieces that can do those things that you have to do to eventually turn this thing around, which is easier said than done. But you saw what you needed to do.
Blake, you got to be honest here. You meant to say that pun. Are you kidding me? Cup of coffee while answering Coffee's question?
That was a
you
good
did that
one.
on purpose. Don't do that. Don't lie.
Maybe that I was a little proud of myself, but yeah, I wish Mike Muscala stayed around for longer, but I get it where he was in his career.
Yeah, he didn't want to stick around, and I don't blame him for it. He wanted to go somewhere where he could win some games, and I get it. I agree with everything you said. I think they absolutely just need to only be focused on maximizing Cade Cunningham for at least the near term future. You know, maybe if he shows that he can't lift you all the way up to a play-in or a playoff berth, then maybe you readjust from there, right? But give him the chance to. He's not had the chance these first two really seasons that he's played in Detroit. The roster's not been set up for him to succeed. I mean, even remember his rookie year, right? Kelly Olynyk playing a bunch of minutes at the 5 along with Isaiah Stewart, and they had to make a panic trade for Marvin Bagley just to get Cade a freaking lob threat. Like that, nothing has ever been set up for Cade Cunningham to really thrive. I think they need to change that. They really need to change that. So that would be my takeaway as well. We're with you, Erwin. Next one, we've probably only got time for a couple more. So why don't we do this? This is from @BasePistons on Twitter. He wants us to rank different types of free agents. So the first type would be a good shooter, but a poor defender. The second type would be a good defender, but a bad shooter. The third type would be good at both, but has some injury history. And the fourth type would be just generally has good history, but did not play all that well last season. So that's kind of a Quentin Grimes type, right? Where he's got a couple years as a good shooter, good defender, but last year was a down year. Another type would be a second draft candidate. So maybe think someone like Patrick Williams. And the final type would be someone that's a really good player, proven that's a very good player, but they're not a great fit. So honestly, that might even be, a DeMar DeRozan type big splash move. What would you think? How would you rank those?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, just out of the gate, I'm thinking like a good player, but a bad fit is probably the lowest on where I would rank these, for all the reasons that we just talked about. But overarchingly, I feel like you have clear needs you need to address. You need to space the floor around Cade Cunningham, so bring in good shooters. Secondly, like this team needs to find a way to obtain a defensive minded big who can protect the rim. So, I mean, ideally, you find a big man who can do both those things, but they don't grow on trees. There's not really one that's available this year. Maybe if you're thinking of the drafts, Alex Sarr could turn into that eventually. So, um, man, injury prone though would be such a, I guess, just setback, and I feel like a crusher. So I would almost put like good shooter, poor defender, good defender, bad shooter, 1A, 1B, and then good. I'd actually put good history, but poor last season below that. Because, I mean, maybe you can turn it around, different situation. Second draft is right up there with that. Like, if you can take a shot on a guy like Patrick Williams, someone else in that offer sheet range, like definitely try and do it. And then, yeah, rounding it out with like good player, but a bad fit. I think we've just seen that you need like everything has to be strategic for this thing to work. Like you can't just put together the best prospects, quote unquote, that you can bring in, throw your top five out there and expect it to work. We can see that it doesn't work. So just get players who address the needs that you know that you have.
All right, Blake, step into my time machine with me. Let's go back to last offseason, okay? And we're looking forward at the Pistons, at the season to come. Obviously, in hindsight, we know what's happened. But at the time, myself and a bunch of other people, we're all looking at that roster and we say, wow, they can put together quite a few lineups with a lot of good shooters, but that lineup's going to be really bad on defense. And then vice versa. They could put together a lot of lineups that are very good on defense, but man, they cannot shoot at all. Couldn't hit water if they fell out of boat. And looking back now in hindsight, that should have been red flag number one for me, that season was not going to go well, because you need guys that can do both. And I am absolutely not willing to to jump right into that trap again with 2 feet. I'm not going to do it. So right there, along with a good player but bad fit, is going to be the first two. Good shooter, poor defender, no interest. Good defender, bad shooter, no interest. If I'm signing you in free agency, you're going to do both. Dang it, you're going to do both. So second draft would probably be, I know. But if I'm going to spend money, that's what I want. So yeah. Look, second draft, I think probably has the most potential there. You know, you do have a couple guys like Patrick Williams that are at least passable on defense, have shown to be average shooters. Maybe they can be more in the future. Maybe good history and poor last season. You're hoping for a bounce back. I do feel pretty confident about Quentin Grimes. So, you know, maybe another candidate like that would be fine. And then after that, injury prone, but good at both. You know, maybe if you ratchet down the minutes, you can kind of hope for longevity there. But that would be my ranking. I want no part of spending money on guys that can't do both. They can only do one or the other. No specialists. I'll draft a specialist. I don't want to sign one.
What if, and this is just a slight thing I'll say, like, what if you put a couple specialists next to each other? Does it offset it for you or not at all?
Probably not, but only because you already have an Ausar Thompson, you already have a Jalen Duren. Like, I guess talk to me if one or both of those guys is no longer on the roster. Because as it stands, I don't think you could put together competent lineups with two really bad shooters and just complete non-floor spacers. You could get away with one. You could definitely get away with one. So if, you know, you're not playing Ausar Thompson and you're not playing Jalen Duren and you sign a guy that's just a great defender but can't shoot and you're going to play him a lot, like, okay, fine, no problem there. Just put him with other good shooters. I look at Ausar Thompson the same way. Like, if you're going to bring him off the bench and play him in a lineup where he's the worst shooter by far, just fine with me. No problems at all. Same thing with the starting lineup. If you want to start him, but you're going to, you know, draft Reed Shepherd to play the 2, sign someone to play the 4, and then, you know, go trade for, I don't know, somebody who can shoot it a little bit at the 5, then great. Yep, no problem there either. Same thing with Duren. It's just you can't have 2. So let's do one more question. I know we're a little low on time. And we got so many questions this week, so I think we're going to try to keep a couple for next week. Thank you, everybody that sent those questions in. We're sorry we didn't hit them in a timely fashion. But we got 2 Jalen Duren questions. I left them to the end because we've talked about him so much, but it's our fearless leader. It's the great Sean Corp. He instructed everybody to ask why I, West Davenport, hate Jalen Duren so much. That's his words, not mine. I don't hate him. I'm just not super high on him. And then our guy at Kevin, who with a bunch of numbers here at the end that I'm not going to read all of them out, but on Twitter, he asked so nicely this question, responding to Sean, saying, given Jalen Duren's improvement offensively this year with his footwork, his finishing on his layups, and just his general young age, why isn't it likely that he can take a leap defensively next season? So I think everybody has heard my answer a million times. So I want you to go first, and then I'll be a broken record. What do you
Oh
got?
no, Coffee wants more explanation from you. Why? But no, actually when you were talking through how you want to have like one non-shooter next to Cade on the floor at all times, I'm with you, but like Asar is at least a good defender. And so I was thinking about Duren when you were talking about that. Like we know he does great things, and like Kevin brought up here, the leap he's taken offensively. He's tried some new stuff. He's definitely a great like rim runner and lob threat for Cade. Wes, me and you have talked about like his defensive concerns at length, so I won't go too deep into it, but we just like he can take that leap, but we have talked about we just haven't seen it yet, so we don't have, I guess, confidence that it's going to happen. And if you're thinking of it from a roster construction standpoint, or even the rotations that you're putting out there, what Duren does good again, like getting to the rim, being like a pick and roll lob threat for Cade, and he's a good rebounder, but he doesn't protect the rim. He doesn't space the floor for you. Those are like the 2 things that we said that this team needs. And if he isn't doing either of those, like it, if he's neutral, like that's fine. But if he's just not going to provide that on the floor, I think you have to consider who, like where, like what does he look like out there? I'm not saying he can't do it, but like we just haven't seen much from it. So just not as confident in it developing as you could be with some other guys, and not just like protecting the rim and shooting, but any skill.
I gotta brush off the dust here, get loosened up. All right, here we go. Here we go. Look, okay, so to what you just said, there's no history of Jalen Duren being a good defender. He was not a good defender coming out of Memphis. He had a lot of questions on that end coming into the league. So that was a question day one. So you don't have history here. It's not like with Matas, right? We were talking about Matas earlier. You buy into him eventually shooting well from 3, but you buy into that because he was a good 3-point shooter at some point in his career. And by all accounts, that does not really apply to Jalen Duren. So that's number one. You don't have the history. It's similar to looking at, Asar Thompson. Are we going to gamble that Asar Thompson next season is going to be a 36% 3-point shooter so that he's league average? I wouldn't. There's no reason to expect him to do that. Would it be unbelievable if he did? Yes, but we're talking about expectations here. So very similarly, there's no history with Asar to be a good shooter. There's no history for Jalen Duren being a good defender. So yeah, like it's tough to expect that leap. On top of that, you look on the offensive end, and Jalen Duren has some very clear and obvious processing problems. Sam Vecini talked about this on the Pistons Pulse this past week with his defense, right? It looks like he's thinking, he's processing what's going on in front of him, and it's just coming pretty slow. You see this on offense as well. I mean, you look at his assist to turnover ratio, it was almost 1-to-1. He made passes he really shouldn't make. He was seeing ghosts out there. Like it's just not clicking the way he's seeing the floor. And you see the same thing on defense as well. He's not rotating on time. He's not seeing what's happening in front of him and then using his athleticism to jump on it. The problem with that is, again, let's flip it back over to the offense. You're trying to evaluate a guard coming out in the draft, okay? And that guard just doesn't look like he's great at processing the floor when he's dribbling the ball. It doesn't look like he's great at reading what's happening in front of him and making those kind of instinctual split-second reads that look really positive. So like an anti-Cade Cunningham, okay? No one really expects that guy to then turn around, get to the NBA, and be a fantastic passer and playmaker out of the point guard spot. It's just rare for guys to really improve as a processor to that level. So that's 2 strikes on Jalen Duren already. He doesn't have history as a good defender, and he's a poor processor right now. And it's tough to expect a guy to really take a leap in that way. Third thing, and this is the worst one for me because I feel bad saying it. I don't think people really understand just how bad he was this past season on defense. Like, if even just purely looking at his counting stats, 1.7 stocks per game, that's steals plus blocks. I don't think that really, it's unbelievable how low that number is. I can't put it another way. He's 6'10", 6'11", long arms, fast, jumps out of the gym, he's quick. It is unbelievable how not disruptive he was. He almost had the same number of stocks as Cade Cunningham. Fred VanVleet and James Harden both had more stocks than Jalen Duren, and those are both small guards who are not known for their defense at all. So he was just so not disruptive. He was so bad in that area of the game, and he really hasn't figured out drop coverage. His arms are down all the time. He's not good at the cat and mouse game. Again, Sam Vecini just brought that up on the Pistons Pulse as well. He's not good as a help defender. Like, he was really helped out by Isaiah Stewart because Isaiah Stewart's very good at playing the low man on defense, even though he's not super vertical. He's very good at rotating over to the block and getting his hands up and deterring shots in that way, which really helped out Duren. Like, he was very bad. He was worse this past season than he was his rookie year as a defender. So now put it all together. I'm sorry for the rant. You put it all together. You've got a guy who's not a good processor and has been very not impactful on defense through 2 seasons. And he's got no history of being a good defender. And he got worse. Like, last year, he was better than this most recent season. I am not going to bet on that being a good defender. Now, to be fair, like, I don't think you need him. You don't absolutely need him to be a good defender at the 5 spot. If you set up everybody else on the floor to be very good perimeter defenders, you can make Jalen Duren work. There's a way that you can do it, and it's all going to make sense, and it's fine, okay? But you can't. It gets difficult with Cade Cunningham because Cade's not a great defender either. It gets difficult with Jaden Ivey because we all know Jaden Ivey's not very good on defense. Asar Thompson's a good defender, but he can't shoot. Neither can Duren. And maybe someone else would bet on Duren eventually shooting threes, but I'm not going to be that guy. I don't think that's happening. So, and Isaiah Stewart can't put the ball on the floor. So, yeah, he's a good defender and he shoots, but no one guards him out there. They don't care because you could just sprint out at him and he's not going to beat you off the bounce. So, like, just with the setup where it is right now, it makes no sense. And so much is going to have to change to make Jalen Duren work. Yeah, that's my rant. I'm just going to leave it there. That's my answer. I'm sorry. That was long. I let it all out.
Oh, no. Hey, Sean really did something when he asked everyone to have you explain. So, hey, got it all out there, but
I was obligated. I had no choice. That's our boss. That's our boss.
Exactly. You
Sean, we love you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sean. That was great. And actually, like, one thing I was thinking about, YouTube user kind of brings it up here. He mentions that if we draft Sar and move on from Duren, I'm almost thinking, like, what happens if you sign a defensive center? Like, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think Hartenstein is realistic. Like, Wes, you've brought up Goga Batadze, who you could probably get on a more affordable deal if that works out. Bring in someone like that, or if you win the lottery or somehow end up with Alex Sarr, I think that takes some of the pressure off of Duren, because, like, right now the rim protector center role, and just like that defensive big man is his. And like you pointed out, some of the holes there are glaring. So if you have someone else who can start in his place or can come off the bench as the first man off the bench, play alongside the starting unit and cover up some of those holes, maybe it could work. But that's causing you as an organization to still really evaluate where you are with Jalen Duren, especially if the answer to it is ending up with Alex Sarr, because obviously you're probably drafting him with the number one, if not the number two pick.
And all of this is on a scale, right? Like the only reason I've got so many problems with continuing to focus on Jalen Duren, like as an organization, is because right now he's your starting center and he has big time problems and questions playing the five with the roster that the Pistons have and just playing the five next to Cade. Okay. Just because of that defense issue. If you want to move Jalen Duren to the bench, I think you're going to get 48 minutes of fantastic play out of your center. Like as a backup five, Jalen Duren would immediately be one of the better ones in the NBA, and I would be super happy and excited about all of that. In fact, if you're going to move Jalen Duren to the bench, I'm now totally open to moving Isaiah Stewart, who's a guy that we know for a fact has had trade interest from other very good like competitive teams. So you could get something halfway decent for a guy like Stu. It's just if you're gonna start him at the five, if you're gonna prioritize him, I think that's where the scale shifts up. And now all of these things that you could live with a guy getting 18 to 24 minutes a night, all those things you could live with then, the problems that he's got on defense, the holes he has on offense, the processing issues on both ends, like now it's a problem. If you're gonna bring him off the bench, you could live with that. And now his rebounding is a huge plus. Now he's a situational guy. Now he's going to excel. I just have issues if he's going to be, a pillar, right? Like the guy outside of Cade that you're gonna focus on. So I'm not a hater. I just don't think he should be your long-term starting five right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation that you have to have. I don't think it's just Duren either. You're going to have conversations
Oh
about
yeah.
Ivy. We've been talking about Asar too. So you have to figure out who is not even like a building block, but who's a long-term piece for you, no matter what that role looks like. We know what the holes are with Duren. Hopefully they improve. Like Kevin brings up, it's possible, but from what Wes mentioned, we just haven't seen it. And if Duren isn't going to space the floor, he needs to protect the rim, or vice versa. And we're not getting either of those things right now. So hopefully you at least.
Quickly, last
Yeah,
thing I just want to say is that it's not just Duren. Like you said, every not Cade Cunningham young player on this roster is going to need to prove that they're not a bench guy long term. And that's
yeah,
a harsh reality, and it sucks because the Pistons have so heavily invested in these guys like Ivy, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. Like those are all lottery picks, and it really bites that we've got to have that conversation. But after the season we just saw, the only guy that you know for sure is a long-term core star level player is Cade Cunningham, and everybody else is going to need to prove that they can get up to that level. And that's it. It bites, but it's honest.
exactly. I couldn't agree more. Should we leave it there? I feel like that might have been
I
a
think
good
we
note
should.
to.
We're way over, and I just rambled for so long. I've lost all my ideas for this week. I've used them up. I only have a certain amount of ideas that I get for every week that I can like speak. So now I'm gonna have to be silent the rest of the night. I got nothing left.
Hey, you put it all out there, left it all out there. That's all you can do. But no, I couldn't agree more that I mean, everyone besides Cade is gonna have to figure out how they're gonna work if they're still on the team, figure that out within the building, and I'm sure the organization is gonna have some tough conversations. For everyone that's still listening, I'm gonna do a couple shameless plugs. Wes and I are both contributing to consensus mock draft that Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and the Pistons Pulse is putting together. That's supposed to drop
Or the
sometime.
Basketball Bulletin, which you guys should
Yes.
subscribe to. It's a Substack. Trevor Lane, Keith Smith, they're amazing. So do read them for just general NBA and some draft stuff now.
Yep, 100%. That's supposed to come out sometime next week. So keep an eye out for that. I have been doing some draft pieces on DetroitBadBoys.com. Release one about a few names in the range for the Pistons' second round pick that might be interesting and all fill a need for the team. Another thing that maybe we'll talk about in a few weeks is the team really hasn't maximized the use of their later draft assets in the past few years. And that would be something that's nice. But also, if there's any other draft prospects that you want to know more about, we're probably going to talk about them here. But if you'd like to see anything written, I'm trying to get through maybe like one of those a week. Always open to suggestions if there's any players that anyone's interested in reading a little more about and from a Pistons lens. So again, like what Wes mentioned at the top of the show, call our new phone number to ask a question and hear your voice on the podcast. Make sure the question's around that 45-second mark. The number for that is 313-355-2717 to hear your voice on the show and ask any questions that you guys are already sending in. Special thanks to Sean Corp, one, for the great question tonight, and two, for being our fearless leader, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, always supporting our show. And shout out to you guys, everyone who joined us and is still with us, for all the great questions and talking points. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.